So it probably comes as no surprise to anyone that I watch pretty much any video that has to do with Tesla or electric vehicles in general. I'm big and bullish on the subject, and I could go on and on about it. Sure, I will. You'll hear more about it. But since I watch pretty much any video there is about electric vehicles, I follow a channel called Fully Charged, which some of you may also follow. I'd be surprised if some of you didn't. But it's an awesome show. The host, Robert Llewellyn, hello, Robert Llewellyn. He's an awesome dude. I just can't pronounce his name. And no, it's a great show. If you don't follow it, I definitely recommend following it. But he did a video recently that I wanted to kind of put out there and talk about a little bit because it's relevant to me in a couple of different ways. One is that it's talking about a company. It's talking about a company in Estonia that is making some progress on supercapacitors. Now, I've covered supercapacitors in previous videos, or in a previous video specifically, and I find them fascinating. I think it's the future if we can, get it down and everything. And so it was really interesting to see what this company's been working on and how they're making progress and the kind of things that they're doing. It's really interesting stuff. I mean, we're talking about being able to have electronic devices that charge up almost instantaneously. I mean, we're talking about if this got implemented in electric cars, I really think that would be the end of gas cars completely, because you could literally charge your car in a couple of minutes in about the same time it costs, or about the same amount of time that it takes to fuel your vehicle with gas. Obviously, if the range is still there, there's other factors. But anyway, the point is, it's really interesting technology. I really do think that it has the capacity to super capacity, yeah, to make a real big difference in the world. So if I find it, I'll find it. I'll put it down in the description below. Definitely recommend watching it. It was super interesting. The other thing, though, that was interesting about this video, I was sick for like 3 days about a month ago, and I'm still clearing my throat every 5 minutes, and it's driving me crazy. Anyway, yeah, the thing that was interesting about it, aside from the supercapacitor bit, was he talked quite a bit about Estonia. Now, look, I'm gonna play the ignorant American thing for a second. I knew nothing about Estonia. Nothing. I had heard of it. I knew it was like a former Soviet state or republic or something. Like I really didn't know anything about it. I just knew of it, right? And this video was, it made Estonia sound really, really cool. Like I want to go there, and I might not come back. I don't know, according to what was in this video. And again, this is going off of one video. So if you live in Estonia, or if you've been to Estonia and this, your experience did not line up at all with this, then, tell me in the comments. I'm coming from a totally ignorant American standpoint here. But no, so according to this video and everything he was saying in it, Estonia is a really interesting country because, again, it was former Soviet bloc. And once the wall fell in the 90s, they had like no connection to the outside world. They had literally one phone that could reach outside of Estonia, and it was the prime minister's phone. And so basically they had to start totally from scratch in the 90s. And geographically, by the way, I wasn't even sure of this either. I thought it was further south than this, but Estonia is basically a Scandinavian country. It's like right next to Finland. And so apparently Finland offered to give Estonia their outdated phone system. Like they kind of were upgrading their phone system. So they had these old parts, and they were like, well, here, we'll just give you this, just so you can have some kind of telecommunications network in your country. And Estonia actually was like, no, I think we're just going to start from scratch. And so they did. Like, they didn't want this old, nearly obsolete piece of tech over here. They wanted their own thing. So that's what they did. And apparently Skype was the product of that. Didn't know this, but Skype came from Estonia. And apparently there's a lot of technological innovations that have come from Estonia because they really started from scratch in the 90s. At building up their infrastructure in their telecommunication wise, and they're like really big on education. They're apparently a very well educated country, and it's just become this hub for technological innovation. And I had no idea. I felt so dumb after watching. I was like, how did I not know this? That's so cool. But it got me thinking about, I guess you call it legacy industries. And again, you know, going back to the whole EV thing, one of the reasons, I keep reading anyway, one of the reasons why old school legacy car makers are not embracing EVs more than they have. They're starting to embrace them now because there's public interest in it. When Tesla put out the Model 3 and got 400,000 reservations in like a week, you know, the rest of the car industry was like, oh, people want this, you know. So they're embracing it now. But one of the reasons why they've been so hesitant to embrace it is, again, because of that dealership network. They make most of their money from maintaining cars, you know, from the service department. It's just like when you go to a movie theater. The reason why popcorn is $15 for 5 kernels of popcorn is because that's where they make their money. They actually don't make that much money on ticket sales. Same thing with the dealerships. They don't make nearly as much money from selling cars as they do from maintaining cars. So when you have an EV that only has 200 parts as opposed to 2,000 parts that could break down, and belts and hoses and stuff like that, stuff that is designed, it's not designed to wear down, but it's going to wear down, you know, and it's going to have to be replaced eventually. There's not a lot of money to be made in the EVs, so they kind of squelched them for a long time. That was apparently one of the reasons why GM did what they did with the EV1, was because they saw, wow, this is actually really popular, and we're going to lose a lot of money if this car, you know, becomes goes out into the mainstream. So it just got me thinking about, I'm going to call them, earmuffs for the kids, shittiness industries. When you have technology that's changing, and technology is always changing, it's always progressing, but I mean, it's going at an especially rapid pace right now. There's always legacy industries that are gonna want to cling on to their business model. Can't blame them for that, but it's unfortunate because it does kind of slow the growth of progress, slow technological innovation, because they have a monetary reason to slow it down. So I think it's just interesting when you have places like Estonia, and there's other places that I've heard of too. I'm going to skip on their names because I probably get something wrong there, but places where a big disaster occurred, say, and they get to kind of start over from scratch. And one of the cool things about places like China and India that are becoming more developed is because they're just now kind of getting their electrical grid in line. They're starting from a place where renewables are more available and they're cheaper than they used to be. It used to be way more expensive to do renewables than they are now. So they're kind of incorporating renewables into that mix heavier than in other places. So they're actually going to wind up possibly, there's a lot of speculation here, but they could wind up with a greener grid than places like, you know, here in the United States or in Western Europe that have to kind of like rebuild their infrastructure. They have to, like, you know, piece by piece dismantle what was already there and build something new. Sometimes when a disaster occurs or somebody's starting from scratch, they can just start from that point. It's easier to build something than to tear something down and rebuild it, you know? And I just find that fascinating. I find that interesting. I think on a societal level, we're going to have to kind of wipe out legacy industries and shittiness industries in order to move forward in some way. And maybe that's a slow process, and maybe we're right in the middle of it, and maybe there's going to be a little bit of consternation involved in all that. There's always a pushback, but I think that's the process that we're living through right now. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble in case you couldn't tell, but I just thought that was interesting stuff. Thought I would share it with you. I'll put the link down in the description below. Definitely go check it out and tell me your thoughts, because this was all new information to me. But anyway, hope you're doing well. You guys take care.